Hey there, welcome back to another Inside Gazealous Studio vlog. This new series is about a costume that I made for a burlesque fan dance. And this, this particular act started way before the costume even began. Like the whole act went on stage before this actual costume was developed. So I was challenged to create an act using an electronic song. And that was hard for me because I'm a classical trained dancer, and electronica is just not really meant for like choreographing to. I don't know, maybe some people would disagree, but it was a challenge nonetheless. And so I created this act. It went well. I borrowed a pair of feather fans from a friend and I just threw a costume together. It's fun to have costume pieces just laying around, right? So it went well enough that I thought, okay, I'm going to keep this in my repertoire. I need feather fans. I really wanted feather fans bad. And there were various grades available at the time. You could buy them from China for like $350, which is what my friend did, that I borrowed her feather fans. And they just weren't great. And the ones I was used to in Jubilee were like top notch. And those were made by a company based out of New York, I believe, and then they later relocated to Pennsylvania. So I went with the next best thing, which were even sponsoring some burlesque performers, I believe. And they were, I think it's called Fancy Feather. So I got my fans from Fancy Feather, my first pair of feather fans. The hardest part for me was coming up with like the color of the act, because it was quite an investment to buy these feather fans, because theirs retailed for, I believe it was like $400 each if you wanted the double layer longest tail plume feathers. And so I was like, okay, I need to save like $1,000. So it took me about 6 months, and I saved every earning, like every burlesque earning I made over 6 months. So that's $1,000. Don't even know how many shows that was, but if you're a burlesque performer, you could probably figure it out. Just goes to show you how little burlesque performers get paid. Anyway, so I had this beautiful shawl that I made years ago, and I always got compliments on it. The color is fantastic on me, and it's just a beautiful color. So I was like, okay, that's the color. It later became the color of my brand and pretty much like one of my favorite costumes that I've made. So I sent a sample of the yarn to Fancy Feather, and they said, oh, well, we have a color that is pretty close. Then you want to pay the dye charge. I think the dye charge is like $75. So I was like, cool, let's go with that. So I got my feather fans. And here they are. They're just so big and beautiful. And I believe this color is their plum, so it's not quite right. If you look. Now that I look at it, I'm like, yeah, no, it's not quite right. But this was the closest, and that was the cheapest option. And unfortunately, I had to have these fans rebuilt. I paid the $40 each assembly fee, and there was a hardware fee. So, like, there was just all kinds of fees. And in part 3, I'll share exactly how much the feather fans cost. But I also had to have a costume. I couldn't just depend on the feather fans. So I had budgeted $1,000 for my feather fans. And then I was like, okay, well, since it's a burlesque fan dance, we'll do a bra and G. Or I think most burlesque fan dances, they use just a G-string and feather fans. And it's like the cheapest costume ever. Well, unless the fans are reusable. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to add a little to it. And I loved the design of the Principal Red fans costume that Bob Mackie designed for Jubilee. And it had these like feather strips that hung down from the G-string and a body chain. And there was like a crown and then like a long ponytail. And the Principal fan dancer she didn't have fans. Everyone else had fans. She was the only one. She had boys that lifted her around and did all kinds of cool tricks with her. So I was like, okay, I want to have feather strips like that. And I'm going to have a bra and a G-string and a body chain. And so trying to find something that looked similar to the rhinestone chain that didn't cost me as much as my feather fans was a challenge. And I ended up creating this. So this is the second iteration of it. It didn't have this chain before. It had similar chain here all the way down. But I added this later when I found the proper chain. This is double-sided, which is really cool because it rolls on the body. And then I covered this little cheap jewelry piece from Hobby Lobby or something. So I'll talk about all of that when I get to the process, but those were my inspiration was also for the bra. And of course I needed pasties. So where's the bra? It's just hiding in the clip. And at the time there was like a really like big trend to have strappy bras. And I loved that look, so I was like, okay, I'm going to make one. So I did. And now I have actually found a couple pictures of me putting it on my little friend here to fit it, even though she's not the right size. She's not the same size as me. Oh, and one other thing is I chose to do beading in addition to rhinestones. And the story about the rhinestones is this. This color was recommended. I brought my fans to my rhinestone lady, and she said, this is the color you need. Light Amethyst AB. Beautiful color. It has a light purple to it, but then it pulls a lot of blue. And I used it on the tips of the fans here. So real tiny crystals just to catch a little bit of the light. So that was the color I chose. And unfortunately, during the creation of this act, they discontinued the color. So that was that's a whole issue with Swarovski. If you find a color you like, they might discontinue it. So buy as much as you can, which is what I ended up doing, and I'll share about that in the stats, the part 3 of this series. But I also decided to go with silver-lined bugle beads. These are Preciosa, and I bought those I think from Fire Mountain Gems, and they just add another level of sparkle to the costume. I don't know how it works, but somehow it just makes the whole costume just like amazing. It is a lot more work than gluing rhinestones onto a costume. It is hand beaded. They are all sewn on individually, passed through 2 to 3 times. And so, I don't know, I just thought I wanted to add a little bit more haute couture to my costumes. So this was the first one where I was really, trying to up the value. So that is the inspiration behind my Com Voce burlesque feather fan act. If you want to learn more about the process, tune in next week where I share all about the steps that I took to make the entire costume come to life. See ya. Thanks for watching today. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about me, you can head to my website. The link is in the description. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing.